All right. Tell us your name, your profession, and a little bit about your background.
Sure, yeah. My name's Sajid, Sajid Saxena. I am a computational biologist, and I went to UT actually, and I studied CS and biochem there. Um, yeah, and I live in Boston now. I don't know what parts of my background you want, but
No problem. Yeah, that's
yeah,
perfect.
grew up in Houston.
Um, just describe a little bit your day-to-day routine as a computational biologist.
Yeah, well, you can imagine this year it's a little different,
Mhm.
but yeah, so kind of computational biology, as you can, it's very self-explanatory. We apply like math and computer science and modeling techniques to biological problems. So my workload is really all from a laptop. So I kind of do biology from behind the screen. So you can imagine there's biologists out there who are obviously in the lab producing data, producing, experimental results, but I take those things and I work on them day to day from my computer. And so my day to day routine kind of looks like, I spend a good amount of my day coding. I spend a good amount of my day just thinking and writing math equations down to try to figure out how I can use math best to solve problems in biology. And then yeah, I also spend a lot of my time reading papers, which I'm sure you guys are familiar with.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So can you describe any particular projects that have stood out to you? Like, what has been your favorite project to work on?
Yeah, I've worked on in my time in the field. I've gotten the chance to work on a lot of projects. One really cool thing about computational biology is that because I'm not in the lab, like kind of pipetting and doing things like that, like I can work on like a lot of different projects at once. So that's a big advantage. I get to work on a lot of stuff. I can pick one that stuck out to me, but yeah. So one that stuck out to me is my most recent one that I just finished, where we were basically trying to figure out if there's a way. How familiar are you guys with like cellular differentiation?
A
Pretty
little bit.
Very.
a little bit. So like that cells start out as kind of embryos and then they become more specialized over time, and you're always producing more specialized cells in your body, like liver cells, like skin cells, like brain cells. They all start as the same thing, that they branch off into different things. So that's a pretty like complex process, and there's a lot of data out there model like kind of measuring what happens in the process, but not a lot of people have thought about, can we take a single cell, and then say, based on what genes are being expressed at that point in that single cell, can we predict what that cell will become down the line without ever seeing what it was going to become? And so my latest project, we like tackled that problem with machine learning, and we basically were saying, can we apply machine learning to gene expression data from single cells and then predict exactly what fate it would become? So like take a progenitor cell, what's its expression levels? Will it become a liver cell? Will it become a brain cell? And we showed that we can like successfully do that. Um, Still a lot of things to work out, but we were able to like predict what a cell will become in the future with a time point at the beginning of its life. So that's been an exciting project for me.
Awesome.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
you just talked about a lot of biology and stuff, but I was gonna say, like, what would you say are like the major biology fundamentals you put into your like job? Like, what from biology do you think do you use like most often?
Yeah, good question. I'd say like the central dogma kind of rules my life. Have you guys heard that word before?
We have
I've
not.
heard it, but I don't really know what it is.
Yeah. So the central dogma of life in general is, DNA encodes like us as people. Everything that's living is encoded by DNA. Um, RNA, which now you guys must be hearing a lot about with like these new vaccines, RNA carries the information that will then make proteins that carry out the processes of our body. Proteins do everything in our body. So that's called the central dogma, that idea that information flows from DNA up to RNA to protein. And my life is basically using the latest, like the latest advancements in like math and machine learning and computer science to further understand that process and see how we can manipulate that process to make things we want. So in that example about cells and what fate they become, like the idea of my project is, we want to be able to mess with cells, change how their genes express to make cells that we want instead of what they were going to become. So that's like kind of the fundamental I use the most is DNA to RNA to protein, and how do we control that process and modulate it? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think we actually just did that unit. So,
Sweet, yeah.
so do you want to tell us any research positions or other jobs you had before this one that prepared you for being a computational biologist?
Yeah. So I spent a lot of time doing research in undergrad. So you guys, I'm sure, are starting to think about, I mean, maybe, I don't know what programs you guys are all in, but you'll do something at UT. And I spent time in labs at UT as in the early days, I did if you guys are in CNS, I did freshman research initiative, how that goes. But then I kind of moved on, and I actually took on some jobs at labs in the summers. So I did research tech jobs with different labs. So one at the Center for Computational Oncology on campus. And then I also did summer internships in college where I came up to Boston and I worked in computational biology departments as a research technician. And then, after college, I even spent some time doing software engineering work at a tech company. And those kind of things put together helped prepare me for a career in computational biology.
Yeah, that's good. All right, thanks.
Yeah.
Hello. I know you briefly spoke about what kind of sets computational biology apart from other biology careers, but could you touch base on that even more? What else do you think sets it apart from other careers in biology?
Yeah, totally. I wouldn't really go as far as saying sets apart. I think the biology kind of research engine is all very, very tied together. Interdisciplinary is a word you've probably heard thrown around, but computational biology is very different, in that we try to take a new look on biology that historically biology has been do small scale experiments, figure out what's happening, and then say, okay, we think this is what the process that is happening is we think this is the process that's happening. But in computational biology, we try to take a more broad approach where it's we're getting tons and tons of data, like sequencing data, genetic information, measuring the protein levels in bodies and things like that. And we try to take all that information and try to model the system as a whole rather than individual little parts at a time. So that's what really makes computational biology a little bit different, is that, we're trying to use these high-powered concepts of, math and computation, which historically in other fields has been really successful. Like in physics, the only reason we know about, the basic physics of things is that we're able to measure millions and billions of individual things. And we try to do the same thing with biology, where we take a really high throughput approach to biology, where there's tons and tons of data, and then we try to make sense of it with math and computation. So that's really it's kind of a more top-down approach than the bottom-up approach of biology.
And I know that this may be an obvious question, but why do you think that students should look into computational biology? A lot of students look into biology itself for pre-med and everything, but why do you think students would be drawn to your career?
Yeah, so one thing I would say is that there's a growing number of physicians, doctors, MDs, that are involved in the field. So if you go pre-med, there's no reason you can't be in the computational biology field. But I would say that it's exciting because, it only came onto the scene, I would say 20 years ago, which as far as science goes is very new, which is fun because there's a lot of low hanging fruit to work on. So there's kind of very simple things you can do and you can be a pioneer in the field. Whereas if you try to go into standard biology, people have been doing it for hundreds of years. And so it's kind of tough to crack into the innovation space. But with computational biology, if you take the time to really do well with your fundamentals, learn computer science, learn math, really understand biology, and go down this path, you can really tackle a lot of problems that have never been tackled before this way, which is really exciting. I mean, I think that would be my biggest pitch is I'm not that brilliant, or I'm not anything like, so like I can still make an impact even though like I'm not the best biologist in the world or like the best computer scientist in the world, but being at the intersection of those things, like I'm able to make a lot of like impact, which I really enjoy.
So kind of back into a little bit more background, but how did you know that computational biology was like the path for you, and how did you kind of first get involved right after graduating or while you were still in college?
Yeah, good question. While I was still in college, I kind of toyed with the idea of pre-med. I toyed with the idea of going pure software engineering. So early on, I realized I like loved math, loved computer science, loved biology. And even like, I don't know, I'm not that old. So like even back when I was a freshman, that was like not so common, right? Like even nowadays, you don't really think of when someone picks biology, you're not thinking, oh, they must love computer science, or when someone picks computer science, they must be like interested in biology. So there weren't a lot of people out there who I could even talk to see like, how do I bring these interests together? But luckily in college, I was able to meet a professor, Tom Yankelov. You probably have not met him, but he's at UT. He's really great. And he like kind of embodied this intersection. He's a computational oncologist on campus. He like uses math modeling to like model how cancer like progresses, and basically trying to see if you can predict how a patient will progress without ever measuring anything in the patient, which is, it sounded like magic to me. I was like, whoa, like what the heck? What do you mean? You can like collect data from this person and then predict what's going to happen? Like that, it just kind of broke all my previously held ideas about biology, where it was very like, you have to measure everything. It's like very description based. It's very like memorizing, like, you guys are memorizing tons of stuff in intro bio. I kind of hated that, but then I really liked the idea that, you can problem solve your way through biology. So that's how I got interested at first. And then once I had that path, I just kept on finding like places around the country that were doing this niche thing, and forcing my way into those spots. And then once I was there, I got more exposure, and then I kind of fell. I just kept falling down this like path of mixing the two, and then after college, it was pretty intuitive what I wanted to do, and I still think I want to stick with this. So yeah.
Really cool. Thank you. And then any advice for students that are currently in the science field and are unsure about it or don't really know what their future might hold?
Yeah, tons of advice, but hard to pick anything to say. It's STEM is tough. But it's really, really fun and really rewarding. And there's a lot of paths. I don't know what you guys are all thinking about. I'd love to hear about y'all if we have time, but I think really make sure to use college as a time where you explore things without a lot of consequence. Because like now when I'm post-college, I'm in like a career, it's harder for me to be like, oh, I want to drop this and try something completely new. But like for you guys, it's like, or anyone at your level, it's like you can switch a class or switch a research lab, or like, talk with a professor who does something that sounds weird to you or sounds cool. And that was kind of how I fell down this path. I just kept on like being like, oh, this person does this, what? This person does this, what? And then I kept asking, and finally like something clicked in my head. And it's hard to say like why that happened, but that's what I would say. My advice is like explore in college if you can. There's still consequences, but there's less consequence than like after college when you have to like explore. So yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
And then just in general, what are some of like the next steps that you'd like to take with your career, maybe subjects you'd like to explore in the future? And then just in general, like where do you see yourself in 10 years?
Oh man, loaded. I'm sure y'all don't like hearing this question either, but I'll answer it. So like in the immediate term, like I'm just kind of chugging away at projects. Like I've recently got interested in like protein engineering, which is, making like proteins that do things we want them to do when they like weren't going to do it otherwise. Like where we want to make proteins that do things that have never been done before by natural proteins. And that's there's this field called synthetic biology, which there are synthetic biologists out there too, if you ever meet one. But I'm really interested in that. I want to see how we can apply like math and computer science to that. So that's like immediate term, I'm working on protein engineering, but kind of longer term, I would like to see my career go towards more like leadership positions in biotechnology. So be it kind of higher level executive leadership at like a biotech company, or I'm toying with the idea of starting a startup in the next few years. So I think like that's kind of where I'm headed. And another alternative path is there's a lot of like in the federal government, there's a lot of need for like new innovation in biotechnology, right? Like you're seeing how important it is that we can quickly create vaccines in response to new things, make sure that they work, make sure that they're safe. There's a huge infrastructure around that. And I think in the next 10 years, you guys will see, along with me, machine learning will change, just like it's changing everything. It's going to change that field too. So I kind of want to be in that mix in the future. So I might want to see if there's like leadership positions in government that I could help bring machine learning or bring modern like machine learning and math to these things that we've been doing for hundreds of years, right? Regulating pharmaceuticals. So that might be an interesting path for me. But again, I don't know. That answer changes day to day for me.
All right. That was actually all the questions that we had prepared for you. Thank you so much for your time. Is there any final words that you have or anything about the field?
No, I think if any of y'all heard this and thought it was interesting, I'm always happy to chat outside of this.
All right.